well, I alluded to it, I think, that very question earlier. By fundamental tax, budget, and revenue reform, I'm very clear that we face a long, we actually have a kind of a twofold structural budget deficit. We have an immediate structural budget deficit. In fact, we'd be, this fiscal year that begins July 1, state government would be in the red, but not for the remaining revenues under the 1 cent sales tax increase, which is now expired. But the next fiscal year, in other words, the first fiscal year of the next governor's administration, we're in a projected deficit, to your question, sir. And then we have this long-term structural debt that we have incurred over just the last few years, because basically borrowing long to pay for short-term cost. And by that, again, I'm referring to the certificates of participation issued to investors under the sale leaseback buyback arrangement, state-owned properties. I'm talking about the pledging of future lottery revenues. There's another dedicated funding stream that was really dedicated or earmarked for public education that's been used for a variety of basically general operating purposes. So I'm pretty confident that through those fundamental tax reforms that I'm talking about, we can not only stabilize state government, but generate sufficient revenues to meet the fundamental obligations of state government. As the saying goes, state government educates, incarcerates, and medicates. But I'm confident that we can meet our fundamental responsibilities for K-20 education, public safety, both of which, of course, are right there in my sort of sweet spot because of my background in law enforcement and in education, but also meet our long-term responsibilities as part of the societal safety net for healthcare, indigent healthcare, or healthcare for the truly needy. The other thing I think we need to do is we have to be cognizant, and I would make the legislature, hopefully, begin to really build significant state budget reserves. So we'd have a rainy day fund. I think one of your questions in the questionnaire was, what about a potential bankruptcy? And in my response, I said I thought that was perhaps a reference to a bankruptcy by local government, by a unit of local government. Obviously, state government would have to backstop local government under those circumstances, but hopefully, if you're using state taxpayer funds to help bail out a local government, state taxpayers then get the first lien or the senior creditor in any kind of bankruptcy proceedings. But we have to build significant state budget reserves to address to have a rainy day fund that could include an emergency like a local government bankruptcy, but also so that we're beginning to set aside funds to basically pay down and ultimately pay off this debt that comes due under these certificates of participation now, less than 20 years from now. The only way I think we can do that is to have a comprehensive package of reforms, as I said, fiscal, budget, revenue reforms, but also as part of those reforms, and this is critically important, I think, to the small business owner, is we need a taxpayer bill of rights in Arizona that basically assures the taxpayer that as part of these reforms, in the good times, aside from putting the funds aside for the rainy day fund and to pay down long-term structural budget debt, we would be obligated at the state level to rebate additional revenues to the taxpayer, so that everybody's very, very clear that this is not a ruse for growing government, which I don't believe in. I mean, one of the big reasons I'm running for governor is my concern that the constant expansion of government is unsustainable, and it's created, as I said earlier, obscene and immoral debt that we're passing on to future generations, and generations not yet born. So I do not believe in the constant expansion of government, the power, the scope, the reach, the cost of government, especially at the federal level, especially under this president and his administration. I think there has to be, someone has to stand up to that and put a stop to that. It's not sustainable. The expansion of government means that we're growing the entitlement society, and more of our citizens, fellow citizens, then become dependent on government, and as dependency on government grows, we see a corresponding loss in personal freedom and personal responsibility. So my fundamental belief about government, the governing philosophy or principles of government, is that government should promote, first and foremost, fiscal responsibility, constitutional limitations, but constitutionally limited government. It should promote free markets, and lastly, personal responsibility. And if we're guided by those principles, I think we can make government work again at both the federal and state level. But I hope you won't let anybody, as you do your interviews, I hope you won't let anybody mislead you as to the size and the significance of the challenge that awaits the next governor and their administration, because these fiscal challenges are huge. They're not going away, and they have to be addressed before we can get on with hopefully trying to improve the fundamental services of government to meet its responsibilities in the areas, as I said before, K-20 education, public safety, and health care under Medicaid or AHCCCS.